Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I am so excited to be reviewing the next installment of the Alien franchise, Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez and released on August 16th, 2024. The film was made under the production companies Scott Free Productions and Brandywine Productions, distributed by 20th Century Studios, who of course is now owned by Disney, based on a screenplay co-written by Fede Alvarez and his frequent collaborator Rodo Sayagues, produced by Ridley Scott, Michael Pruce, and Walter Hill, and starring Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson. The film was originally planned to be a straight-to-streaming release for Hulu similar to Prey. However, a change of plans has allowed it to have a wide theatrical release. After Ridley Scott's vision for a prequel trilogy was never able to be realized, with a new company now taking over in Disney, there would be a new direction for the franchise, with Fede Alvarez taking over as director, but still working under Ridley Scott and a number of the original producers. There was a lot of trepidation amongst the fan base over the concern of Disney, such a large corporation, taking over such a beloved franchise. However, due to the success of Prey and the career success up to this point of Fede Alvarez, I think there was cautious reason to be optimistic going into this film. That optimism seems to have been realized since the release of the film, with an overwhelming response both critically and commercially. It's crazy to think this was originally slated to just go straight to Hulu. And I can definitely say that I appreciate the opportunity to have seen this film in the theaters. I am a huge fan of the Alien franchise. Both Alien and Aliens are easily in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I even love a lot of the underappreciated films such as Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I enjoy Alien vs. Predator. I like Alien 3. Resurrection, okay, that might be a step too far, as well as AVP Requiem, but for the most part, I'm a huge fan of this franchise, and I was very excited. This is the second Alien film I was able to see in the theaters, so that was a really cool opportunity. So having given that brief context, let's get into my thoughts on the film. I want to start by giving enormous praise to both Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson for giving excellent performances. These two characters and their connection to each other are the emotional core of the film, both being well developed through the writing, as well as having great arcs realized by excellent actors. You really believe Spaney's Sigourney Weaver-like transformation in this film, as well as Johnson's shifting motives throughout the narrative. The rest of the actors do a good job and really sell the terror of the situation they're in, but I really wanted to point out Spaney and Johnson for having such well-developed characters both in the writing and in the acting. With such a large burden for the two of those actors to share, they both knocked it out of the park. Great job to both of them. I also want to give huge praise to the production and set design, the set dressing, and the great effects that are done throughout the film, especially the practical stuff. It looks really great. Fede Alvarez has a really good knack for this, and the film itself, right, it's really obviously calling back to the original Alien film, and it does that in a number of ways. First is the focus on blue-collar workers and their exploitation at the hands of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, with these themes of corporate domination and corporate greed once again coming to the forefront of the franchise. Using themes such as corporate malfeasance and exploitation, matching it then with almost H.R. Geiger-like production design and set design, mixed with a love and appreciation for practical effects, and then putting all that into a pure horror film. That is the tonal identity of the film. It is a bet on going back to the basics for the franchise and calling back to the original film in a number of ways. There is, of course, all of these basic core filmmaking elements that call back to the original film, but there's also a number of fan service moments that call back to the original film, as well as other entries in the franchise, which has sparked some controversy amongst some fans, with fingers being pointed towards Disney for these creative decisions. There is, of course, the most glaring example of this in the Ian Holm CGI character that's brought into the film. Bringing this core villain back to once again serve as a core villain certainly isn't an inspired choice. He did have this weird, uncanny vibe feeling throughout the film going for him, which I guess was a positive for the character overall. But it doesn't end with just that, as there is numerous references throughout the film to the original film and films in the franchise, with Ripley's iconic quote in Aliens being referenced in a moment that I think took me out of the film for a second. There's also just a lot of the basic story structures and moments that you kind of expect that are then brought back and replayed, but in slightly different moments and slightly different contexts, with the same overall narrative structure underpinning the whole film. And there definitely has been some backlash to these fan service moments and constant references. I'll be honest, I mostly appreciated them. I didn't think they detracted too much, but I do think there was a little bit of an excessive use of it. That being said, though, I'm a fan of the franchise, and I enjoyed seeing these little moments referenced. I also liked that they tied the film into the rest of the franchise, including Prometheus. I like that they didn't just abandon or retcon certain sequels, instead tying it all into one broader franchise, with the specific context of the film taking place between Alien and Aliens. And while this strict adherence to the narrative structure of the original film maybe made it a little bit predictable who was going to survive and the narrative transformation of one of our main characters, I do think that there was enough mixed in that really made it an interesting film. I think the ending with the weird baby transformation, it made a lot of the sort of psychoanalytical readings of the first film much more explicit, and I really enjoyed the imagery that was created. I mean, that was a really disturbing creature that they made at the very end of that film, that weird man xenomorph hybrid. It's really cool to see stuff like that, and I do think that was a brave chance that they took, and I think it landed very well, at least for me. And I think just in general, the horror really worked well. There was great tension set up, and I really appreciated one of the major aspects they did take from the first film, and that was that slow build-up. That was so essential in that first film, and I was kind of nervous when I was watching the movie that they were immediately going to get to xenomorph action because of modern audiences and what studios and filmmakers tend to think of modern audience expectations. But no, they went in a slow approach, and I've seen some people critiquing it, but I really liked it. It really allowed us to build that emotional core to the narrative that made those horror scenes and those action scenes towards the end that much more impactful. So I really did appreciate it. I also really appreciated the fact that they were kind of reluctant to show the xenomorph as much. They did show the facehuggers a lot, which was cool. They had so many great moments. Fede Alvarez really knows how to direct those intense mayhem, kind of chaos scenes with those facehuggers, right, chasing after them. There was so many great little moments, chest burster scenes. You had a lot of the iconic stuff you expect out of an Alien film, done very, very well and very interesting. You had some very great bloody scenes, some very gross and grimy scenes. Everything felt like an Alien film, which was awesome, but we also had some cool new chances taken here and there with, like I said, the man-baby sort of xenomorph hybrid. I thought that was really cool. I thought that the emotional core of the narrative was really interesting and slightly different, right? You have the sibling kind of relationship, this weird sibling relationship between a human and an android, and the android's shifting sort of motives because of the directives it's given. So I have to give props to Fede Alvarez for making a very well-made film on a technical level. As I said, I appreciated the restraint he showed with the xenomorphs before finally giving in and really having that mayhem towards the end. That scene when Rain figures out how to use the zero gravity in order to finally shoot the xenomorphs showcases a very satisfying conclusion to a number of elements of the film. One of these elements is the character growth of Rain, her arc from being a reticent passenger towards a resourceful, smart, badass warrior who can fight and kill all these xenomorphs is really satisfying to see, as well as finally unleashing xenomorphs and the acid blood in such a cool way, in such a unique way, with the zero gravity that I thought was both achieved very well with the CGI and effects, as well as filmed in a really interesting and unique way that I think was very satisfying to watch. That was one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie. Overall, the film is another well-made film to enter into the franchise. This is a franchise with very high quality standards consistently for the most part, other than a few examples here and there. We have very talented directors bringing their own unique visions. Now, Fede Alvarez, unfortunately, I think, didn't bring enough of an original vision, but what he does bring here is really excellent stuff. Really interesting and cool effects going on, great production design, a very well-made film technically and narratively, with great performances. Now look, it's not a perfect film, like I said. I would have been much more interested to see Fede Alvarez go into more unique territory than he did, but what he did do in the tweaks to the formula was very fun to see, and I think it's another well-made film in the vein of the original Alien film, which I can never really complain about. Like I said, I love Alien, it's one of my favorite films of all time, so another film that very closely follows that formula, modernizes it in a very smart way. I'm not going to complain too much, though I am disappointed there wasn't enough brave chances like the one taken with the human xenomorph hybrid. I wish those types of chances were taken more frequently throughout the narrative, and there was more of an interesting and unique approach to character growth, not just replicating the development of Ripley's character from the first couple films. For my final thoughts, as a fan of the franchise, I really liked this film. I think it's another solid entry, and I definitely recommend, if you're interested at all, to go and see it in the theaters. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next week.